Hello, Arts Administration students. You have survived to week 3 of the class. I am proud of you. You're doing a great job. So a couple of things. Do not forget that your organizational profile is due this Saturday by 11:59 p.m. It will not accept late assignments, but you will not be able to receive higher than a C if it is not turned in by 11:59 p.m. this Saturday. I am unavailable for a couple of days. I am traveling until the ring was all topsy-turvy. It's better now. I am traveling until Tuesday night. So if you have any questions, you'll have to wait until I get back from my travel. I'm sure you're all doing a wonderful job. I'm sure organizational profiles are going along great. There will be available at the same time that you can see this video an assignment called your demographic profile. I will have assigned there'll be a spreadsheet, and within that spreadsheet I will have assigned every group a demographic to research. So let me show you a little bit of what this demographic profile will look like. And this, you can see? Okay. This is an old assignment. I will adjust it before you see it. Okay, so it says, in developing a marketing plan for your organization, it's important to show that you understand the demographic you're trying to reach. So when you're marketing, you need to make sure you know what you're marketing and who you're marketing to, right? So the first thing you did, the thing that's due this Saturday, is your organizational profile. That is what you're marketing. And then your demographic profile is who you're marketing to. This, like your everything for this project, is a group project. So you will need to work together with your group, okay? I will give you each a specific demographic to research. I believe that's correct, that date. Let's look at the calendar. Actually, it's the 14th. So this is also a profile. So it's 2 pages, single-spaced, and you need it to tell you, the things that you need to know in order to market to these people. How do they use media? Are they familiar with your organization? And how many of them are in the Houston area? And those sorts of things. What's their racial, ethnic, socioeconomic information? So you'll need to look into all of those things and write a short summary of the information that you find. You can find all of that information on the internets pretty easily. Oh, I'm very close to the camera. So that is your demographic profile. If you have questions about it, shoot me an email and I will answer it as soon as I can, but it's not due until next Saturday, and I am traveling, so I cannot answer your questions right this second. Okay, programming. She says, pretending that she has it all figured out. Wow, that is forever. Haha, programming. Okay, programming. So, program philosophy. Programming is the thing that it is the guiding principles and attitudes that guide decisions and work. They're the principles and attitudes that guide the decisions and the work. So they're the things that you do, right? So your programming is going to be the stuff that your organization does. It's based on various considerations. You need to take in lots of different things. You need to think about your organizational mission and your community context. So what does your community want? And what is your mission tell you that you need to do. Everything you do as an arts organization or as a nonprofit needs to go back to the mission. You need to avoid the quote-unquote activity trap. That means you're just doing things to do things, right? Some arts organizations believe that you need to be always programming because that's how you bring in money. But every program costs money. And if it's not furthering your mission, then you need to stay away from it. You have to think about the concept of the audience, not just ticket buyers. In the next couple of weeks, we're going to talk about audience development. An audience is a relationship, right? It's not just people coming to buy tickets. You want to cultivate a relationship with them. You want to educate them. You want to teach them. That is the concept of audience. You want to make a commitment to accessibility. And accessibility has lots of different terms, lots of different ways that it can be applied, right? So accessibility, financial accessibility, physical accessibility. You want to make sure that you have every socioeconomic, well, I said financial already, so that was silly. Anyway, so you want to think about your source of your ideas. Where are you getting your ideas? Are they all coming from the same place? Or are they coming from new places? Your capacity for risk. As an organization, how much capacity for risk do you have? That means, like, can you afford to not make money on this? And if you can't afford to not make money on this, how do you ensure that you have the right capacity for risk? And then your definition of success. So I believe that evaluation starts from the beginning, and you need to define success at the beginning of your program in a way that makes sense for you and for your organization. It could be a lot of ticket buyers. It could be increased awareness. It could be, that you want certain people to audition. It could be that you want to attract a certain group of people. It doesn't have to be about money, but you have to define success at the beginning so that you know how successful you are at the end. All right, so program planning. This is a process intended to select and test the feasibility of your options. So it's a 6-step process, okay? It's a 6-step process. What do you think the 6 steps are? Think about it. If you were planning something, what would the 6 steps be? So first, you want to test your assumptions. So test your assumptions. So what are you assuming about your audience? What are you assuming about the programming that you've chosen? And you have to identify and see if they're valid. So you might make an assumption that people only go to see well-known plays or well-known painters. So how can you test and see if that is valid? You need to agree on goals and objectives. So why should you engage in this program? How does it support your mission? How does it support your community? And you need to get the entire program planning team on board to ensure that you all have the same goals and objectives. Next, you define the program. Who, what, where, when. So let's say we're planning a multidisciplinary performance art project. First, we would define who. So who's going to be in charge, and who are we going to bring in to do work for us? What are they going to do? So sometimes when you choose an artist, you know what they do, but sometimes you might want something specific. Where are you going to do it? Are you going to do it in a found space, or are you going to do it in a traditional theater? And then when are we going to do it? Next week? Next month? How much time do you need to market and to plan it correctly? So that's how you define the program. So that was how many steps was that? 1, 2, 3 steps. So step 4 is you examine your resources. So how many resources do you have? And your resources can be everything from money to people to space to, I don't know, highlighters. Maybe you need a bunch of highlighters and you just don't have a bunch of highlighters. That would be a resource you would need to examine. Make sure you know your objectives. So how do your resources go back to your objectives, right? That you agreed upon before you even started this process. Next, you want to identify and evaluate issues, obstacles, and opportunities. So you want to think about, where might we run into trouble? Where might we succeed? And think about it across all your stakeholders. As an organization, your stakeholders are your audience, your artists, your board, your staff. You have a lot of stakeholders, people who have stake in your success or in your failure. So you want to think about, are they all going to be happy with all of the decisions that you've made? And where might there be an opportunity to do more in relation to your programming? And lastly, you want to finalize the plan. So you've thought about all of this, and then you think about, can it go as planned? Did we give ourselves enough time? Did we give ourselves enough money? Do we need to think about it more? Is there going to be a problem with our stakeholders? Is there going to be a problem with our funders? Should we just cancel this plan altogether, this program altogether, and move on to something else? These are all the things you need to do to finalize the plan. So just to review, the 6 steps are to test assumptions, agree on goals and objectives, define the program, examine resources, identify and evaluate issues, obstacles, and opportunities, and then finalize the plan. Program design. So next you want to create program policies. Well, what's a policy? It's like a police officer wearing a... No, sorry, I'm sorry. So policies are their rules and guidelines, and they should be considered by staff and those most effective. So program policies need to be considered by the people who are most going to be affected by those policies. The rules, the guidelines. Are we going to do one show every 6 weeks? Are we going to do, how long are we going to allow our exhibition to be up on the walls? And how much time are we going to give in between to allow for takedown and setup? Those are program policies and guidelines. Do we need a security officer available at all times? What hours will we be open? What hours will we do the show? Those are all program policies. Quality. So you want to think about artistic quality. So you want to engage those with expertise in defining artistic quality. So that means you want to engage with people who know if a painting is good. You want to engage with people who know if a play is good. You want to engage with people who have the expertise in defining whether or not something has artistic quality. Sometimes you can define what artistic quality is by defining what it isn't, stating what it isn't. So what is it not that you want, right? So I can tell you our performance art piece is not interactive, right? It's not visual art. Our performance art piece is not... Think of some other knots that our performance art piece could be as we go through this process. And then we want to engage those within the culture. So our performance art piece is targeted to college students. And so I would engage with you to ask you, what kind of issues are you facing? What kind of things do you need to know? What kind of things will you want to experience? Speaking of experience, the quality of the experience is another thing you need to take into account. How are the people treated? Are means of education in place? Are contexts properly set? So like, have you given people an understanding of what performance art is? Is there a place for people to learn about the history of performance art, or about the history of this guy, or to understand exactly what the performance artist is trying to do? And is he treating people well? Are you going to come in and all the lights are going to be off and you won't know where to sit? Or will you have the lights on? Or, will he just be standing there when you walk in? All of these things are things you need to think about as you're designing the program. So selecting artists. So who gets to choose? When you're planning programming, who gets to choose artists? The artistic director. So sometimes it's the staff, sometimes it's the board of the organization, and sometimes a jury or a panel would do it. Those are all ways that you would select an artist. How are artists found? There's lots of different ways to find artists. You can do a direct invitation. So you could just reach out to one artist and say, hey, I have this performance art thing, and I really want you to be a part of it. Or you could do a call for submissions. You could just put it out there. Hey, I have this performance art piece. It's going to be this date and time. I'm looking for people who have ideas. And last but not least, you could do solicitation, which is where you reach out to people individually and you get a lot of different ideas. Or you ask other people, who do you like? Who's your favorite performance artist? So a lot of you are artists, so it's something to keep in mind as you go through this process. One of the best parts about learning about arts administration is learning about the other side of the coin. So as artists, you all have things that have happened in your past that you just didn't understand why an arts manager or an arts administrator made that choice, and they really frustrated you. So I always say, when you run into those things, write them down, try and figure out what they could have done differently, and then you'll be a really great arts administrator. Here are great ways to work with artists. You want to include them in the planning, right? You don't want to just say, like, I have a room that has 3 walls. They are white. They are this size. I expect your sculptures to fit in that area. Artists would like their art to be displayed in a way that is good for the art. And so maybe you can ask them, or would you be more interested in doing this or doing that, or give them a little leeway. Always pay your artists a reasonable fee. Sometimes that's not, you're not able to do that because of money, but you always want to give them as much money as you can. And you need to make paying artists a priority. You want to consider fairness. So how many times have you produced this one artist piece? Or how many times have you, done, how much time did you give this other artist piece, or how much space did you give this other artist in your gallery? You want to develop a comprehensive contract and have them sign it. It's got to protect the artist and the organization. Contracts are hard. They're hard, but you got to do it. And you got to prepare the artists. Make sure that if you involve them in the planning, if you tell them what their fee is, if you make sure they understand what they're getting into, then they should be fine. Because remember, at the end of the day, artists are people, and we have to treat them like that. We have a tendency to treat them like commodities, but they're people, and we need to remember that, with mouths to feed and rent to pay and cats to feed. So program choice and design. There's lots of different things to think about, okay? So do you want to do sequential programming? So does that mean, do you want to go ahead and set up that you're going to do 1, 2, 3, these 3 things in order? Maybe you're going to do the ring cycle. That's an opera. Or are you just doing a program at a time, right? Frequency. So frequency is something you have to think about. How often can you afford to do a program? Do you just want to do this program once, or do you want to think about repeating it or using a stock sort of programming design that you do for the rest of your season. Extended or return engagements. So what do you do if your show continually sells out? Do you have room in your program design to be able to extend or to have a show come back if it's particularly successful? And just remember to know your audience. What do they want? What are they looking for? Are they interested in, Disney shows? Are they interested in weird performance art? Are they interested in new art? And when you're thinking about programming, you got to think about them as well. Okay, things to consider when you're making decisions, okay? Controversy. So a lot of times you will, as an arts organization, have public funds, and think about how using those public funds might be construed or misconstrued by the public. So you want to take preventative measures. Think about what controversy might exist in advance. Try to mitigate that controversy. Be prepared. So if something does happen, have some messaging, some communications strategies in place. Know what you're going to do if somebody, if you have a controversy. Be clear and consistent. So always say the same thing. If you at the beginning have followed the 6 steps, if you know your goals, if you know your outcomes, if you know your objectives, and you've agreed on that to begin with, then you should be fine because you can be clear and consistent. You want to respect opinions other than yours. Just because someone doesn't like your art or doesn't like what you've chosen to do doesn't mean that their opinion is wrong. It just means it's different. And you need to respect that they have a different opinion. And you want to utilize your supporters. So you have an audience, you have people who are loyal to you, and they are a great asset in times of controversy. Because they can speak on your behalf. They can remind people about your value and the goodness that you do. Culturally specific work. So remember, when we talk about culture, we talk about lots of different things, not just the idea of main culture, right? So you want to aim for authenticity. You're going to recognize differences, discourage commodification, and understand the needs of both traditional and contemporary cultural artists. So if you're doing a culturally specific work, you want to make sure that you're including people of that culture in the decision making. You want to think about what's different between what your culture is and what the culture of the work that you're doing is. You discourage commodification. That means don't turn their struggles, their experiences into something that you just make money off of. It needs to have value beyond the money. And then understand the needs of both traditional and contemporary cultural artists. So there's a difference between, Frida Kahlo and Gonzo 247. Those are both Hispanic artists. One is contemporary and one is traditional, and they have different needs. And you have to decide if you're going to support one or the other. Or sometimes you can do both, but you just need to make sure that you understand how to do that. So the aftermath. So after you've completed a program, you want to make sure that you have media coverage. So that's all marketing and the way that you talk about it. Remember earlier we said a way to avoid controversy is to be clear and consistent. So we'll be clear and consistent in our aftermath as well in our media coverage. Follow through and thank yous. Make sure that you follow through with people who've donated to you and to the artists. Make sure that you are make sure you are completing contracts and finishing your payments. Sometimes with grants you'll have final reports. These are all follow through. Documentation. So you want to plan on your documentation from the day that you begin, and you want to wrap it up as quickly as possible. So you defined what your success was way at the beginning. So as the program is going on, you should be able to decide if you have met those success benchmarks, and then you should be able to write your final report pretty quickly and get it out. And evaluation is part of all of this, right? Evaluation is, were we successful based on the questions, or were we successful based on what we wanted to be successful with from the beginning? So we define success, and then we figure out, were we successful? The book has some really great examples of how to define success beyond the, you don't need to see that. You do not need to see that. How to define success beyond the financial. It has a lot of information. It says artistic success. It has a lot of really cool stuff in it. Also, it has some great methods of evaluation. It goes into what the different ways of evaluating a program are, and the different things you can evaluate, right? And depending on the question that you've asked yourself at the beginning, that's how you would evaluate at the end, right? That's why we start with what success is and what our goals and objectives are at the beginning, so that we know what to do at the end in order to answer those questions. So that is programming. It was a lot in a short period of time. I spoke very quickly. If you have questions, feel free to reach out. If you read the book, will give you more context, but that should give you a good understanding of where to start while you're doing the reading of the book. Great. I hope you're having fun in the class. Let me know if you have any ideas on how we can make this class more interactive, because I'm super tired of sitting in my office and talking to myself for half an hour. Yeah, I'll see you guys next week.